Hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February 11th, 2020, and this is the weekly meeting of Kubernetes SIG Docs. We've already had a very full slate, and we didn't even have recording turned on. It appears that our agenda has been hacked and the previous one destroyed. Root causes are still totally unknown, but the document has been not only its contents removed, but the document itself destroyed. So we've cobbled together a temporary agenda. The link is in the Zoom chat. So we have a new visitor, Adam B. Kaplan, who thankfully had already loaded the doc and was able to capture the buffer and is going to send it to me to repopulate this new version of the doc. Sadly, this means that a collaborative agenda, those days are gone. So I suppose it was only a matter of time, but here we are, and c'est la guerre. So on we go. We have quite a bit to do today. Let's see if we can remember it all. First thing, welcoming new contributors. Adam, we're so glad to see you.
This ended up being very fruitful. So this is actually first time being on this meeting, though technically not my first contribution to Docs. Years ago, I submitted a patch around using, it was the Amazon Elastic Container Registry, clarifying some behavior around there because they like to rotate their pull secrets every 12 hours. And I guess this is back in the 1.3 or 1.4 days when it looked like the node at least was able to take care of that on your behalf if you were using ECR and I want to say COPS. But anyways, I now work for Red Hat. I'm on the OpenShift developer experience team. Docs isn't my normal day-to-day. I typically am managing OpenShift's build system and the image registry. And I have a idea, probably towards the end of the meeting, would like to discuss in terms of enhancing our docs around the scheduler and eviction.
Perfect. I have added the recovered buffer back into the new document created. So the lights are back on. Thank you, Adam. Let's see. I'm just adding a note here, Adam, to talk about Doc's proposal for, you mentioned the scheduler and
scheduling and eviction.
Scheduling and eviction. Very good. All right. Any other new contributors? Chima, you are you new or merely new to me? Well, we'll give them a chance to introduce themselves as they are able. For now, let's move on to updates and reminders. PR wrangling. This week's PR wrangler is Karen Bradshaw. Next week is Barney Makanda. Both have signaled that they're on board. So thank you, yay, to Karen and Barney. As always, make sure you know, if you're an approver for SIG Docs, make sure you know what your scheduled PR wrangler shift is. All right, let's go on to our agenda. So we have a piece of process first, and that is a chair transition in SIG Docs. So Jennifer Rondeau has been our co-chair for, golly, a while now. When did you first start, Jennifer?
I don't remember, considering the confusion I just expressed around what year it even was that I started a new version of the agenda. I started contributing to the Kubernetes docs in 2017, fairly early in that year when I was working for a Kubernetes startup, which some of you may recall. I don't remember, sometime between then and now. Actually, sometime, I think in 2018, y'all must have invited me to become chair. And last year, I started a new role, which meant that my ability to fulfill my chair responsibilities diminished significantly. And it became pretty clear by the end of the year that I just could not continue to serve the community well in this role, and that we also had some really stellar people stepping up to the role. So it's a good thing. Well, it's a sad thing for me because this is an amazing community. I'm going to be stepping away altogether for a while, but I will hope to be back as, sort of involved as I can manage once the various things swirling around in my life and my work and my day job settle down a bit.
Well, thank you for all of your contributions as a co-chair. You did amazing work, and you're always welcome back. And Jim and I have, sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
I had just one thing to add to this, shameless plug. One of the things that is particularly pressing right now that means I really need to step away from the Kubernetes community for a bit is I am increasingly involved with helping run the Right to Docs conferences, and I'm in the process of looking for a venue for an East Coast conference this year. So no promises yet. We hope to do it, but it's still a work in progress, and we can't say for sure that it's going to happen. But since y'all are docs, at least docs adjacent, if not docs immersed, and a lot of you are docs immersed, just reminding you, the Right to Docs community is out there. There have been some really fruitful collaborations between the Kubernetes docs and Right to Docs communities over the years, and I fully intend to continue to push on those.
Awesome. Thank you. So as Jennifer is stepping down, Caitlin Bernard has been a chair shadow for many months, I think probably close to 9 months at this point, and has agreed to step up as a nominee to be a co-chair and replace Jennifer. So the piece of governance that we have to do, oh, sorry, Caitlin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Caitlin. As Zach said, I've been shadowing for co-chair for a while now, but I've been involved in SIG Docs for a long time before that, helping with a lot of the website stuff as well as leading the blog sub-project. And that's kind of what I've been involved in.
Awesome. Thank you. So the piece of governance that we have to do today is to formally accept Jennifer's resignation and then formally vote in Caitlin as co-chair. And unfortunately, this is a bit of theater since the only people voting are Jim and myself and Jennifer for the first one. So let the kabuki unfold.
Do emeritus's get to vote too?
We're happy to accept a period of comment from Chairs Emeritus. If you would like to add anything useful and brief, Jared.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not a Chair Emeritus until after I vote.
It's true.
Well, all right. I mean, useful is such a tall order.
In that case, no. I'm sorry. The comment period has been closed. If that's where we're drawing the line.
The chair does not recognize.
And with that, I shall mute for the rest of the meeting.
Oh no, Jared, don't disappoint.
All right. We have before us a motion to accept the resignation of Jennifer Rondeau from SIG Docs co-chair. Do we accept this this motion for Jennifer to resign? If so, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Regrettable aye.
I vote to promote Jennifer to emeritus status.
This motion has been amended. How do we feel about the amended motion? If you approve of the amended motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Total quiet in the peanut gallery. The motion passes. Jennifer has celestially ascended to the role of Chair Emeritus. All right. Now, Jim, if you're going to surprise vote me, this is going to get really awkward. So I would like to nominate that Caitlin Bernard step up as co-chair for SIG Docs.
I accept. I feel like I should introduce some sort of drama here. Yeah, wait a second.
I was
We
kind
didn't
of
talk
waiting
about
for you
this.
to do this. Like I was waiting for
Was
you
a
to really
deleted
just...
agenda not enough drama for one call?
No.
Rein it in, people. If we're going to go over the top, commit. Otherwise, keep it on the rails.
No, I totally back and support that. Aye.
Very good. I also approve. Caitlin, bippity boppity boo, you're co-chair.
Congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you.
Hooray!
Very good. Moving on. Tim, you're going to be on vacation.
Yep, I'll just be out of pocket starting on Thursday morning until Tuesday of next week. Just letting folks know that just we'll have limited availability. So maybe around, may not be. I'll be playing hockey in the mountains of Colorado.
Awesome. Have a good time. All right, docs. So I had put on the agenda the question of how to discuss deepening the pool of good first issues. We have got a lot going on today, so I'm going to bump that way back. We will get to that if we have time, and I'm going to put Adam's agenda item before mine. All right, so release 1.18. Savita said that she would probably not be able to make this meeting, but she did let us know that things are going pretty well, as expected. I've just noticed there's a hideous string instead of my actual name. There, I fixed it. So two things that I noted from the release 1.18 process. Vineet has done, he's forcibly rebased release -1.17 onto master. So that is, that went well, that went fine. So at this point, I'm confident that it will continue to go well. And he also opened the first merge PR to merge master into dev-1.18. And that also went really well, 174 commits, no conflicts. So that process looks like it's well in hand also. So 1.18, I haven't heard any concern. Things look good to me, Jim. Caitlin, any release concerns?
Nope.
All right. Okay, let's move on then to URL front matter attributes in Markdown files. So yesterday and very early this morning, we ran into an issue with PR 18834. If you go, I did link to 19068, and that's the issue that I opened to describe what happened. Basically, the long story short is that there are a couple of different options in Hugo for declaring the URL path for a particular file. They all have different effects. Some of them are not very friendly, and it's not always immediately obvious what is the correct attribute to declare in the front matter. So the three attributes that are available are URL, slug, and alias, or aliases technically. We discovered the hard way that URL sets an absolute path for a page without creating a redirect if it's an existing page. So the takeaway from that is don't use URL, use aliases, unless you are absolutely sure what you're doing. So Caitlin uses slug a lot for blog posts because the way that blog posts are titled is sometimes not very friendly to read in a browser bar, especially on mobile. And Caitlin absolutely knows what she's doing with Slug. So would it be appropriate to call you the Slug Queen of Kubernetes?
Perfect.
No? So just be very careful about how you're declaring a path for a file. You consider URL the danger zone. Use aliases wherever possible. Aliases will, it does exactly that. It creates an alias, and it also sets up a redirect that preserves the searchability and the discoverability of a particular file. We can get a little into the weeds about how exactly, or like best practices around declaring an alias, but given that we're already like a half hour into the meeting, I think maybe let's leave that for next time. Let's see, best practices for aliases. Discuss on, today's the 11th, on the 18th, so we'll discuss that next week. And that leads also into make sure you're testing your changes locally before you commit them to the repo. So it was basically, we have a you break it, you fix it policy in SIG Docs. Jim broke it, it's Jim's responsibility to fix it, but also I, as an approver, I let that change go. Like, I know how these attributes work and it still slipped past me. So it's my responsibility to fix as well. And that's one of the things that we ask as an approver. If you approve a breaking change, help fix it. So that's what I was doing, racing the clock against my Ambient tablet at 12:30 a.m. To try and get a fix out before I passed out and went unconscious. So the takeaway from that is make sure that you're testing your changes. If you test locally, test in the Netlify staging build. Make sure that if you're playing around with site architecture, really with anything, make sure that you're actually testing out the functionality. So it's really embarrassing when your co-chairs break things that they should have caught with each other. So do as we say and not as we do, and make sure that you're testing all your changes. Yes, Celeste.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions about this because this kind of dovetails into the mire that I'm in with contributions. And you answered one, which is we recommend using alias unless you know what you're doing. The second question, this is more just out of curiosity, which is, have we considered dropping a blank template file into the Kubernetes directory somewhere so that people know roughly what front matter to use if they're doing something new? That's kind of question number one. The question number two that I had, which is again from my own somewhat new experience right now, we're saying test your changes locally. Do we have a recommended suite of testing tools? Because, for example, I kind of like MacGyvered my own way into an HTML link checker, but I'm not sure if it's like what's kind of our recommended path for people in that regards.
Yeah. Do you mind if I answer that, Zach?
Yeah, go.
Sorry. And first of all, I do want to take ownership. I think it's good to have these discussions in a larger group and say, here's what happened, here's what went wrong. And so this was initially a change that I made, and I did test locally. This is something that Zach and I were talking about. Give me the same situation 1,000 times, I'd make the same error 1,000 times. What I did wrong here was I tested the change for what I was PRing. So I wanted to create the alias for the /rback, and I tested and I said, hey, this works. Where I made the big mistake was not testing previous functionality, and that's my takeaway and my lesson here is not only testing for what your PR is changing, but test for what was previously as a standard for your PR. So in my case, this alias, while it does work, how does it affect the existing content where it lives, which I would have never, ever checked in a million years. But now I will do that and check retroactively. So to further elaborate on your question, Celeste, I test locally using Hugo. So in the website repository, you can type in Hugo serve. We have some documents around that. I believe the current model on the K/website is using a Docker container. It's containerized Hugo basically to host your web pages. I think there could be an improvement. What we mean when we say test locally, I think everyone has their own way. Netlify does have free services where you can test your changes directly in Netlify running your own website. So I don't think that there's necessarily a single way, but there is guidance out there. And like I said, personally, I use Hugo Serve locally to test that.
Okay.
To answer your first question, thank you, Jim. To answer your first question, Celeste, is there a template? Yes, but I think they're looking at the directory where they reside. They are woefully out of date. So we could definitely update the templates. And for the record, templates reside in website/layout/partials/templates. Let me see. Let me share my screen really quick. I have to like super squint. There we go.
Oh, no, sorry. You totally misunderstood me, Zach. I'm going to cut you off.
Oh, yeah.
Because those are the actual, like, this is what builds the website template. But what I was talking about is, for example, when you create a content page, it kind of it'll throw you an error and do the capture for the bit. Thinking of
Celeste.
You don't know what can see and throw an error being too long, so you and I can talk about this at a later date.
Hey, Celeste, I'm sorry. The latency, the oceanic latency was really strong. We lost you for a lot of that.
Basically, what I was going to say is TLDR, you and I can talk about this one-on-one. I don't want to derail the meeting.
Sounds good. All right. All right, Adam, let's talk about docs for scheduling and eviction. You're muted.
Right. Yeah. So what started as just a comment between me and the team that owns the OpenShift CI infrastructure on what quality of service meant and how that actually affects pod behavior turned into something a little bit larger. And I'd like to actually share my screen if that's okay with you. So I'm not sure if that's something I have to do on Zoom.
A little green share button at the bottom.
There we go. All right, so can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
So as I started reviewing the documentation around QoS and pod eviction and the scheduling, I grew a little frustrated in terms of how things are currently laid out today, particularly in the concept section. So what I'm proposing, and this might be something that I guess we can discuss how I could move this forward. What I'd like to do is see if there's any interest in renaming the scheduling concept to scheduling and eviction, and then create sort of a coherent narrative around how pods are scheduled on nodes and how they are removed from nodes. So I spent a day splitting it into I think the list is now 10 items long in terms of things to do. Some of it is moving around existing documentation, but others is proposing new documentation. So I don't know if folks would like me to stop here and maybe explain a little bit more where I'm coming from, or keep moving forward.
I am fascinated. I'm just looking at our the rest of our agenda. Check, clean up. Yeah, go for it. Can you do it in like another 10 to 15?
Sure. So the focus is going to be helping people who are new or experienced to understand how workloads are assigned to pods, how pods can be guided to specific nodes, how they can avoid nodes, and then go into what happens when your cluster is under load, which is when the eviction piece comes in. So some bits, like assigning to pods or nodes from nodes, is currently under the configuration section, which if you look at that today, it's almost like the junk drawer in your kitchen or your office. There's just a bunch of miscellaneous stuff there. I was proposing moving that from configuration to scheduling and eviction, moving the taints and tolerations article to scheduling and eviction, moving pod priority and prevention from configuration to scheduling and eviction with some modifications, proposing new articles around the quality of service concepts, which I believe it's currently in, there's some items there under tasks, as well as creating a new article under eviction. And then moving a few other bits that are currently under either configuration or the scheduler, moving them into scheduling and eviction, but retitling them as advanced topics. Some of them, particularly around scheduler performance tuning, resource bin packing, and the scheduling framework, are alpha features. And these are things that are not enabled by default, or are things that, you know, you're only going to really look at this if you're really digging into the weeds or you want to be on the bleeding edge. So the thought process is that we kind of move from the scheduler introduction, working through the logic of how your pod is placed, with the assigning pods to node article, the taints and toleration article, moving through to quality of service and eviction, and then having at the end of the sort of topic map these advanced topics around either alpha features or features that require non-default kubelet configuration. So this is actually a rather large thing and would need several bits to happen.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts from folks?
Sorry, go ahead, Brad. You had your hand up.
Yeah, so I really like this. You know, scheduling an eviction is, you know, those are very obviously complex topics, and the fact that, you know, you have things that are in configuration, but moving them all to that umbrella topic of scheduling and eviction, I think would really help folks find everything that's related to those topics. And Adam, I don't know if you know Wei Wang. Do you know Wei, who works on scheduling?
I don't think I do.
He's a scheduling maintainer. He works for me, so I know we can get some really good technical folks to review whatever content you plan on putting in there. So I kind of like the thought process.
Yeah, this is really cool. I like the way that you're thinking about this, and I agree. Like configuration the junk drawer is kind of an apt metaphor. So reorganizing this content into scheduling and eviction, I think, makes a lot of sense. So Adam, what are you looking for specifically from us?
So I guess my first question is, what would be the next step to making some of these things happen? Would it be a matter of just starting to open up pull requests? Should there be a TEP here so that we maybe get some broader community buy-in around this reorganization? Those are the things that are on my mind, is sort of what's the next step here.
Gotcha. what I would do first is basically take this and put it in an issue in the repository and give folks like 48 to 72 hours at least for comment on it. But like what you have here is really solid. So I would make copy pasta out of this, put it into a new issue in the K website repo. And then open a series of PRs, just start opening PRs that actually implement the bits here. And we have really good reviewers and folks who I think would love to see this content happen. So yeah, again, we can give you plenty of feedback and review to make sure that the content makes sense and that it plugs in well into the website. And we can even help you avoid the pitfalls of front matter attribute declarations. So, but yeah, I would start with an issue and give 48 to 72 hours for comment, and then start opening PRs to actually implement this. And if you're looking specifically for, I think, yeah, Brad would be, if you want to assign Brad Topol, Brad can wrangle reviews from his contact, Wei Wang. And we can also get like our, if you remember from the start of the meeting, we have weekly PR wranglers, folks whose, we take turns, approvers in the repo, wrangling PRs and helping them get what they need to pass and approve. It sounds like this might be like an umbrella issue with a whole bunch of PRs underneath it. And one thing to consider is whether you want to do those, whether you want to like do an iterative process where you like merge PRs as you go and how to structure the work that way, or whether you want to like have a bunch of PRs that all merge together in like a mega branch. And like consequently having a mega branch PR that other PRs are descendants from. So just like ways to think about how you actually want to introduce these changes in content. And I'm happy to meet with you like offline if you want to discuss, if you want to get like down into the details of how to actually do this.
Sure. I'd probably be more inclined to start with just a series of smaller PRs. That tends to work better with A, my workflow, but B, also with my time constraints. I probably will not be able to just package these all into one PR in a reasonable sort of time frame. I feel like some of these might be quick hits that could be done in a few PRs, but particularly writing the article on QoS and eviction, that will take a significant amount of time.
Yeah, so one thing I would like to add that's near and dear to my heart as of the past 24, 48 hours is as we're talking about moving content around, I think part of the strategy needs to be, what are we doing with the old placeholder for the content, whether that's a redirect, whether it's how do we clarify that this information is moved? I know things like scheduling, paints and tolerations are hot topics. I know the research for the CKA exam, CKAD exam, after breaking the site last night, I'm a little bit more conscious about what is the historical state of it and how do we convey that information. And I think this is a great plan. I love the idea. I think scheduling is kind of the spaghetti monster. And I think that I commend the efforts. It's a strong +1.
Yeah, Adam, this is Brad. I think it's a great idea. Feel free to use me as your go-to contact for this, and I'll make sure I'm reviewing and the Way is reviewing, so you're getting timely reviews. And I like your approach of breaking it up into little chunks. That just makes it easier on everybody. And doing the low fruit first. Go ahead.
Interestingly, sorry to cut you off, Brad.
It's okay.
Come on, internet. On Jim's point of how do we convey the state of the old site to the new site, this is the ideal use for an actual alias, is you alias the old URL to the new URL, and then it hopefully doesn't break any links on the way. That can get a little messy over time, though.
The downside to using an alias here is that it preserves the existing content organization, but overlays an almost invisible mesh of reorganization on top of it, and that the more sensible organization isn't the one that's the most visible. And like aliases are beautiful things, but in this case, because Adam's talking about like reorganizing an entire section of content, I think like actually changing the names and adding entries to the underscore redirects file is like the better way to go.
But I would actually, sorry, continue.
Yeah, go.
No, I was gonna say that if you're gonna do it at the redirects file level, what I would maybe do, Adam, is like go through the actual content changing and reorganization in one pass. And once you're done with that, I would then open another PR and actually like manually change the links, like do a search and replace, and then second PR once all the content work is done, so that we aren't actually relying on the redirect, at least internally, because they get messy.
So that would be I would be copying the content. Am I understanding that right? Copying the content to the new location, or would it just be?
Yeah, move the file.
Sorry, I was taking notes from Savita, so I was only half present for that. Celeste, what was the TLDR for your suggestion?
The TLDR was, yes, do like add something to the redirects file, but once the actual content change is done, do a second PR after, or like a big PR after, and actually search and replace through the site content and redo the links, so that we aren't actually like completely relying on that redirect.
Oh yeah, no, that's very smart.
Oh, okay. Now I understand that.
Yeah, that's yeah. Let's make sure that the sub-redirects file isn't a load-bearing structure when for broken links specifically. Yeah, good catch, Celeste. Very nice. Okay, Adam, if you are done sharing, do you mind ending your share?
I will gladly share. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks. That was really cool. I think obviously you heard a lot of enthusiasm from SIG Docs for proceeding with this plan. So yeah, I think there's no shortage of folks who are happy to make sure that work succeeds.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Or folks, I should
Cheers.
say.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. Savita couldn't make the meeting, but she said that the docs release team has started tracking enhancements, working on placeholder PRs for the February 28th docs deadline overall status screen. So thank you, Savita. Okay. I want to make sure that I'm going to move talking about good first issues to next week. Let's see. Discuss 218. Right, so let's talk about architecture. So we've got an open pull request 18817. It changes the build scripts for how we actually build, what the build command that we send to Netlify to actually build the site. And this is a little bit of cleanup work. There was there was a previous PR, it's linked to from 18817, that removed basically we no longer run the script that checks for Hugo version mismatches between makefile and netlify.toml. So 18817 is from Tim Bannister. It's a straightforward cleanup file, but Tim wanted to discuss it in the meeting because it is an architectural change, and he wanted to discuss it out of an abundance of caution. So it looks good to me. I think maybe the best measure of success is that the Netlify preview built for the PR without ricking anything else. So if the build scripts work and pass CI, then I don't know how else we would test that. So I guess just looking at this really quick, does anybody see any reason why this PR shouldn't merge?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't see a reason why it shouldn't merge, but I have ran across issues where I've updated netlify.toml to have a different netlify version, or a different Hugo version, where then in the build would fail and it would kick back and say, here's what happened. And I'd say, oh, shoot, that's right. We've got the 2 locations we need to update. I don't have the historical context why those both exist. If I had to make an educated guess, I believe that this goes back to, it's kind of is related to a question earlier to local testing. I believe the local testing advice is to use a makefile to build your local environment, and I'll have to double check that. So I believe it's a matter of staying in sync with how you're doing things locally versus how we're doing things in Netlify. I don't think this will have an impact to the builds per se, but if we want to continue down with that recommendation of using the makefile for building, I'm not sure if this makes sense, but I believe now that I'm talking out loud, this change, if I'm not mistaken, let me take a look real quick. No, this isn't the one. There was another proposed change, I believe, that basically synchronized the 2 files. So instead of checking, it just went off of one source of truth. And this looks like it completely removes it. So no objection, just some cautious tales.
Yeah, sure. So that PR that imports, so in 18817, there's a link in the description, 18020, and that's what 18020 does, is it imports into makefile the Hugo version as a variable from netlify.toml. So that's how they're kept in sync now, is because like I think we both did that at least 2 times each, was updating the Hugo version in one file but not in the other. And what 18020 did was make netlify.toml the source of truth and import that Hugo subversion as a variable into the make file.
Yeah, I'm a stronger +1 now. Sounds good.
Okay, yeah. All right, in that case, I will go ahead and approve this, and this may be how I spend my afternoon fixing things, but it looks good to me, so. All right, cleanup, architecture, oh, same thing, okay. Quick question for folks. There's a PR open in Kubernetes right now, 87879, and what this PR does is it basically moves changelog review and approval out of the root directory of KK and puts it into the changelog folder. So it widens the pool of changelog reviewers and approvers. And this is basically how the release notes happen for a Kubernetes release. And we can, if we like, have an entry block in the owner's file, either as reviewers or approvers. My opinion is that this isn't something that we need to touch, but we can if we want. So I wanted to put this to discussion to see if folks think that we should be reviewers for the changelogs that go out with every release. I hear no super strong enthusiasm, so I think we can
Was
safely
there-
pass on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, could you think of some previous situation where we were like, oh, we wish we could have reviewed that? Did we ever get burned in the past by not having an opportunity to look at those? I don't recall anything like that.
So the release notes were, this is, this inevitably happens. I wasn't expecting it to happen this quickly. The loss of institutional knowledge that happens when a chair retires. Jennifer was really big on the release notes process back in what, 1.10, 1.11. And she would have a stronger historical context for how release notes got to the place that they're at. But historically, no, that's release notes is its own separate track of the of a Kubernetes release. So we're not losing anything, and we're not really gaining anything other than awareness, which we could already have if we wanted it.
Sure.
So the question was whether we wanted to automate that awareness, whether we wanted it to automate or not. And I am hearing no one say, yeah, let's automate that. So the good news is that we don't have to take any action.
Cool.
Okay, diagrams. I see no David Kipros again today. So we got some, Jared dropped a link in feedback to the diagram statement of work that Istio has released a set of diagram creation guidelines that look really cool. So I know that David remarked that he'd seen them and that he was investigating them more deeply. So for the diagram piece to move forward, I think let me ping David this week. But I think let's wait for him to like thumb up or thumb down the Istio guidelines and whether those are portable to Kubernetes diagramming or not. All right, where are we for time? 11:29, my God. All right, anything to discuss in the last 30 seconds of this meeting? All right, I'm gonna call it.
Thank you, Zach.
That's a SIG meeting. Thanks, Adam. Thank you again for saving our bacon.
Yeah, thanks all. Thanks,
You're
Adam.
welcome.
Take care.